what's very important to understand is that what happened in Egypt is always a model, right, for what is going on in the end of time. In other words, the Geulah, the model for the Geulah, is basically the same concept or the historic event that happened in Egypt. That's a very big indicator, and it also in many ways reveals what is going on. Okay? Now, the first thing that we have to remember is that the Ribono Shel Olam is now involved in what's called a rescue mission. Now, if you remember in Rosh Hashanah, I mentioned that there are three conducts of God. One is the behavior or the actions of God in terms of setting up the entire creation and to create a person and to be able to test him so that he can get Olam Haba by his own efforts. Right? That's called to create the backdrop or the situation. That's called Hanogas HaKiyum. I mentioned that on Rosh Hashanah. The second is to await the acts of man and to see what he does. So if he does the right thing, so you reward him, but not in the sense of real reward, but you allow him more opportunity, you see, to be able to do the tikkun. The third thing, or rather, now if he does bad, so then of course you want to punish him so that he can atone for what he did wrong, thereby earning the reward in the future world. But I mentioned that there's a third series of actions that God does, and that's called Hanhagat HaYichud. That is the attribute of the one, which means that it's the concept called rehabilitation. What does that really mean? It means this, okay? Imagine you're walking and all of a sudden you see somebody's house that you know is on fire, okay? And you know that there's no time now to go and call the fire department and to run and get a phone or whatever. So what you do, it's called an emergency. And in an emergency, what you do is you try to do whatever you can to try to put out the fire, you see. Because in your mind, what's the critical idea? The critical idea is it's called rescue, that you will do anything you can to rescue the situation. Or, for instance, if you see somebody drowning, you don't have time to go and call the lifeguard, until he comes, the guy's going to be dead. So what you do is either you jump in, or if you see something on the surface, you throw the guy some type of life raft, so he can grab onto it and be saved. That's called rescue. And the primary idea of that is there is basically no time to do other things. But you do this because hopefully that will work. Understand that? So rescue is a very important concept in the armaments of God. The last series of actions that God does is Hanhagat HaYichud, which means the actions of the Almighty One, who's above all justice, and God can do whatever he wants. And that series of actions is all about rescue, you see. Now, the problem is that we don't understand how it works. God resorts to anything that will rescue his people, the Jewish people, you see. Because really what he wants is all the Jews in Olam Haba, in the future world, So he's going to resort to actions, right, which will save the Jewish people, even though, to us, they look, not only are they unknown, but they look terrible. They seem to be contrary to his character traits of mercy and chesed, you see. And also, they are completely mysterious. They defy logic. in many ways, the Holocaust was that. It was what's called a rescue operation. Now, the problem is that we don't really understand, what do you mean by rescue? It is very mysterious. We don't understand many times how it works, because remember, in the Holocaust, not only did the people who sinned die, it was the righteous also died. I mean, Germany killed not just, the average Jew, but they killed so many people involved in Torah and mitzvot and so on. So we don't really understand the logic. It's the same concept of Akedah. The Akedah was called a rescue, which I explained on Yom Kippur. What it does. Same idea. So there are many times that God will employ a rescue operation to save the Jewish people. But remember, the hallmark of a rescue operation, the Hanhagas HaYichud, is that it's mysterious. It doesn't conform to our logic or our understanding. It does conform, however, to be able to rescue the Jewish people and to get them positioned in Olam Haba. This is a very important concept. And it becomes even more important when we are approaching a messianic era, the concept of rescue. Now, if you look at Egypt, you begin to understand, right, that there were two fundamental ideas that made no sense, yet they were critical for rescue. Okay? Once you understand that, you'll understand what is happening today. Now, the first idea is that when the Jews were in Egypt, they were in the 49th level of Tum'ah, which is defilement. And as a result of that, they were really not worthy of being redeemed. In fact, they were only one step away from the 50th. And had they descended into that level of defilement, then basically the Jews would be stuck. Then they would not be worthy of being taken out of Egypt. So therefore, because of that situation, God had to rescue them. But there was no time to wait. He had to do it then. Yeah, but the problem is, wait a minute. You do it then, they don't really deserve to be taken out. Even at the 49th level. I mean, could you imagine what Sukkot did they have? And not only that, look how many Averis they had done, because the Jews also worshipped the Egyptian gods, which we know from the Midrash. So the question is, two things had to happen in order to rescue the Jews. The first thing that had to happen is that God had to erase the sins of the Jews, the atonement process itself, you see. And the second thing, he had to provide them some merit. And based on that merit, the Jews could be rescued. You see, it's a very important idea. Two things needed to be done for God to rescue the Jews. What were they? Well, the first idea is in order to erase or atone for a great deal of the sins of the Jews, right, was atonement, suffering, Yisurin, right? But the problem is, Yisurin, there already is Yisurin. Just being slaves in Egypt itself is Yisurin, But apparently that wasn't enough. Because you have to remember, even though they were slaves, they went home and they had a regular house in that sense. They had kids. They were married. And they had, in a certain sense, a life after the slavery. The slavery basically then was forced labor, But once you went home, you basically reverted to being more normal. So therefore, that suffering that the Jews had wasn't sufficient. So therefore, what God did is he intensified their labor. How? Because he put into the mind of Paroi that Paro said, well, it's not enough that you guys make bricks, you need straw. But the Egyptians supplied the Jews with the straw. But the second thing he said was, no, you guys got to gather and go out at night and gather in the dark. And remember, there's no flashlights. You guys got to go out into the field all over Egypt and gather straw. That was terrible. Could you imagine, not only are you compelled to do labor in the daytime, but at night you got to get up in the middle of the night and got to go hunt throughout the land looking for straw to make bricks in the day. And remember, and the number or the amount of bricks that were made in the day cannot be diminished. Therefore, the Jews suffered terribly under the slavery of the Egyptians. The question is, why did God do that? Why did he intensify tremendously the suffering that the Jews had? And the answer is, because God now had to take into account what is called a rescue operation. He had to get them out of Egypt before they would fall into the 49th level of Tum'ah. You see. And as a result of that, he had to intensify tremendously the suffering. So it would sort of like erase the difficulties that they would have, the sinning that they did. And as a result of that, they would be able to be taken out of Egypt, you see. And the Satan would have no kitrug. He would have no prosecution, no argument to stop it. So we now understand. I call this the straw gzera. It is the gzera of gathering straw at night, you see, because God is involved in a rescue situation, and because of that, he's got to really intensify the suffering of the Jews, you see. The second thing which God has to do is not just remove the sins, but he has to somehow give the Jews a merit. A merit, you see, because the Satan is saying, okay, so they have no sins, but why do they deserve you taking them out? You see, why do they deserve you doing miracles for them? You have to be on a special level, stature, to do that. It's not enough just to be tohor, meaning from sins. You have to be, in a certain sense, a tzaddik. You have to merit this, you see. So therefore, God had to give them a merit of some sort. What was the merit? You see, especially in the beginning. Now, we know that right before they went out, God told them to slaughter a lamb. Now, the Egyptians worshipped lamb, believe it or not, as a god. And therefore, right, the Jews were offered or commanded to sacrifice the Korban Pesach, the Paschal lamb. You see, and because they defied the Egyptians and sacrificed their God, and they trusted in God, that was a tremendous merit for them to be taken out miraculously. But that was at the end of the makot, of the plagues, you see. But there had to be something in the beginning, and there was. What was that? Well, here's Moshe Rabbeinu. Imagine, Moshe Rabbeinu is appointed the deliverer to take them out, which means he is the Mashiach, or almost the Mashiach. Not fully, but almost there. Comes to Egypt, right? And he announces himself to the Jewish people. And of course he has to prove himself. So they call Sirach Bas Osher, and she said that one of the main signs is the Mashiach will use the terminology, right? Pokra Yifkoid, God has surely remembered. And of course Moshe Rabbeinu used that phraseology, you see. So what's interesting is they believed and they knew that Moshe Rabbeinu was the deliverer, which is incredible, you see. But the amazing thing is this. Imagine a messianic figure comes, and all of a sudden it gets worse, you see. much worse. Because Moshe Rabbeinu and Aaron HaKohen came to Parai, that's exactly what initiated the straw gzera. That's exactly what intensified, you see, the tremendous gzera, decree that they have to gather straw at night. Could you imagine how morally depressed they were? It's unbelievable. This is not just an average guy coming and trying to rescue them. This was a messianic figure. This was the Mashiach ben Yosef, almost, right? Where God sent him. We're not talking about a guy who decided to try to rescue them, right? We're talking about a shaliach, an agent of God. Yet this is the very man that is responsible for much greater suffering, right? That's unbelievable. How can a messianic figure be responsible for it getting worse? You see? So could you imagine? That's my Moshe Rabbeinu came running back to God. And he said, Lo mehare oiso la'om hazeh. Why have you done evil to this people? Which obviously was very bad, because he judged God to have done an evil. Bad news. But Moshe Rabbeinu, but so the question is, what was Moshe Rabbeinu thinking? God told him he's going to harden Pharaoh's heart. But what Moshe Rabbeinu thought, he's going to harden his heart not to let them go. But not that it's going to get worse. That he didn't think. And that's why he ran back to the Bershom and said, what'd you send me for? Why have you done evil to this people? That's why. But could you imagine the mood of the Jews when it got much worse, not as a side idea, incidental, but the Mashiach himself caused an enormous amount of suffering to the Jews. Could you imagine the incredible despair that the Jewish people had? Now, we know one idea is to have an atonement, but there's a second concept. Because what God wanted is that the Jews have to trust him. The midah of bitachon, of bitochen. Yes. What God wanted is that if the Jews trust him, that if he sent Moshe Rabbeinu to bring the people out, to deliver the people, well, God is not playing around. So, and they believed Moshe was the Mashiach, then they have to believe that God is not going to do this without a reason. It's very similar to that Akedah. Of course to them it made no sense. How can a messianic figure be worse for us than if he hadn't come? But the idea was that the Russian wanted people to despair. Exactly. You see? So he put them in a situation that they could despair, but he wanted them to have bitochen and not judge God and not question God's acts. That would provide an incredible midah or schus, merit for the Jewish people. You see? So we see two things happen. And what I'm telling you is a very important concept because it explains what's going on. The first concept of the straw gezerah was to atone for the Jews, to make them worthy to go out. And the second thing was to give them a tremendous merit that they would not question God, you see, and they would believe in God and that he didn't send Moshe Rabbeinu for nothing. And that's what happened, you see. Now, what is interesting is look at the end. Same idea. Imagine the Jews are now finally got out of Egypt, which is incredible, right? And all of a sudden they're at the sea, Kriyas Yamsuf, they're at the Red Sea, or the Reed Sea, whatever it's called, right? And all of a sudden, there it is. There's a full Egyptian army, like it said in the Chumash, 600 chariots, brutal, to destroy the Jews. You see? Could you imagine the despair? Right? That's what it was aimed at. In fact, they were so morally depressed that they told Moshe Rabbeinu, how could you do this to us? Because their backs was to the sea. They couldn't get out. They were trapped. right? So they said to Moshe, because there was no graves in Egypt, that you had to take us to die in the desert or in the wilderness. You see? So could you imagine the incredible despair finally being taken out, like a roller coaster? You're finally out of Egypt, right? After 400 years of slavery, especially the last years when it was terrible. And all of a sudden you are threatened with death or with a resurgence of slavery. And believe me, it wouldn't be easy, because now the Egyptians would get even for them for leaving Egypt, you see. But why did God do that? Why did he put them back or bring them such utter despair? And the answer is, same idea. Because they needed a schus. Because it wasn't enough for the schus to get out of Egypt. They needed a merit to have the Egyptians destroyed. You see, a person may get out of his tsaros, but there's always the danger that the tsaros will again re-envelop him, you see. So there's always that danger. Okay, right now the Jews are out of Egypt. But so what? The Egyptian is one of the greatest armies in the world at that time. They can always go after the Jews in the wilderness, capture them again, and bring them back to be slaves in Egypt, you see. So that means you have to destroy the enemy, that he can never do this again. But for that, they would need a tremendous merit. Again, even though they atoned, and they were on a much higher spiritual level, but to have that, to destroy the Egyptian army where they would never again be enslaved by Egypt, right? That they would need a special merit. Especially when the Satan, at that point in time, was saying, what do you mean? They worship the idols. So why do you want to destroy the Egyptians and leave the Jews intact? The Jews also worshipped idols. So what God needed is a merit why he wants to save the Jews. What was the merit? Bitachon. God wanted the Jews to believe in him. The tremendous merit of having faith and trust in God. That whatever God does is righteous and is correct. And remember, this defied logic. It didn't make sense. God takes them out of Egypt, and now he wants to re-subject themselves to slavery? This makes no sense, you see? And that's what I'm telling you. This is what the rescue mission is. And the rescue means not only you have to atone, you have to believe in God. You have to trust that the Hashem is not going to abandon you, but that whatever he does makes sense. Based on what? Based on the rescue mission. You see? So that's what God needed to do. That was the second concept. And therefore the Jews did believe in Moshe Rabbeinu, in the Rebbeinu Shalom. See? That's what it says. Vayaminu b'Hashem u'Moshe Avdoi. You know, they truly believed in God and in Moshe Rabbeinu. And therefore Nachshon ben Aminadav, right? He was not the only one, but he went into the Yam with tremendous trust that God would not kill him, you know, by drowning him. So that one man reignited the heart of the Jews, you see, and then they all began to go into the sea, and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, the sea split. And of course what the Hashem did is he made the Egyptians think, the sea split, so we can actually go in, you see. So of course they went in, and the waters rushed back and destroyed the entire Egyptian army. And the only one left was Parai, the only one. But what we see here is very important, that there are two things the Jews need. The first thing that the Jews need is an atonement, right? So the Satan doesn't sit there and prosecute them. But God also needs a merit for the Jews. Rescue needs both. Let's take a look at what's happening today, right? There's no question that we are witnessing historical events. Never happened before, you see. This country has had a president, Trump, who has done unbelievable things for the Jewish people. Never happened before. This is historic. We know what Trump has done, right? He has moved the embassy to Jerusalem. He has declared Jerusalem to be the capital, and therefore that the state of Israel is legitimate, right? He has restored the Golan to the Jewish people. He has taken away the stigma that they have not broken international law, but that Judea and Samaria is theirs. He has defunded the Arabs. He has stood up to the UN and to Europe. He has done so many things for the Jews, and now he wants to restore. He wants to make peace between the Arabs and the Jews, and there are many countries that want to sign on. I mean, what he has done is unprecedented in American history. So all of a sudden, whoever realized this, their hopes are raised. You see, their hopes are raised. But all of a sudden, what do we realize? That there's this guy, Biden, right, who in so many ways, how in the world can this guy run against Trump? Like I said, the man is completely mentally challenged. He has done nothing in 47 years, you see. Not only that, he's a thief, he's a crook. He openly took bribes or extorted the Ukrainians and so on. Yeah, I'm not even going to what his son has done, you see, And he's a complete socialist, leftist, wants to destroy the economy of America, make it socialist, take away your freedoms and so on. When you compare that to Trump's record, it's like there's not even a comparison. So when we see that all of a sudden Trump is being thrown off his horse, right? It's incredible. Not only does the whole country hate him, you see, but Biden is winning in the polls. Is this normal? Is this sane? And then all of a sudden, to stop Trump, right? All of a sudden, Trump gets COVID. His wife gets COVID, right? So it's going to be very hard for him to go around and campaign. This is insane. It looks like God is trying to stop Trump. And the idea to that is clearly Jews, whoever understands this, are being demoralized, no question. But what is the Barsham doing? He wants the Jews to believe in him. You see, even though there's no Mashiach in that sense. However, we have to believe that God is on our side, that he will not destroy us, he will not destroy America. Because the Jews need America to further the incredible progress that Trump has made. You see. So we watch this, and then we watch Israel. Israel is in the throes of tremendous amounts of coronavirus. That whole country is locked down. They're having thousands of people have COVID-19 every day. And I heard they want to lock it down for many months. This is insane. And now I hear that, in the Jewish neighborhoods, what's happening, right? In the Jewish neighborhoods, you have tremendous uptick, rise in corona. And I heard that, Cuomo wants to shut down all the schools and the yeshivas.
He did.
In what? In Brooklyn? Williamsburg? I mean, these are the major places for Jews in Queens, right? It's unbelievable, you see? And it may even happen in New Jersey, in Lakewood, or whatever. And there's an uptick in Baltimore. So the question is, what's going on here? But we understand. Remember, I told you that COVID, is basically for the purpose of atonement. Therefore, people get sick. People die, unfortunately, tragically. Or they tremendous pachad mavis, tremendous fear of death. And then economically, it's a disaster. This is the first requirement for a regula, and that is to have an atonement. And COVID-19 is an incredible atonement, especially being addressed to the Jews, especially. But the second thing God is doing, which is incredible, is that he is raising tremendous despair among those Jews that realize what's going on. I'm not talking about the Jews that are liberals and that they live in the dark. They can no longer distinguish between their friends and their enemies. Forget about them. It's tragic. That's what happens when you're in 2,000 years of exile. But the unbelievable thing, right, is even for the people who realize what's going on, you're really thrown into despair. Moral, what do you call it? Depression. When you see what's going on here, that Biden is winning in the polls, and that Trump's now has COVID, and so on. All of that is you have to trust God to be tochen, because the Russian needs to be tochen in that sense to withstand, the prosecutions of the Sultan. That is what's happening in America and in Israel. Those two concepts, those are the two necessary ingredients in order to bring the Mashiach. And we are nothing more. We are going through the exact same thing that happened to them. Atonement and bitochen and trusting God. Very important ideas, So this explains what's happening. But what will happen, hopefully, is that just like Kriyas Yamsuf, there was a Ness, when it was impossible for the Jews to survive. It was impossible for one man like Moshe Rabbeinu and Aaron HaKohen to take the Jews out. How could two people take out slaves that were economically critical to the Egyptians from Egypt? And of course, that's what the Baruch did. Same idea. It's impossible for the Jews to escape the Egyptian army. However, the Baruch moved Teva. He broke Teva, the natural order of things, and he let the Jews out. And then the Jews, of course, went to Har Sinai to receive the Torah, and this began the entire real tikkun process of the Jewish people. I believe this is what's going to happen in the elections, that something will happen where Trump will have a decisive victory over Joe Biden, and not only that, all the enemies of the Jews that are feeding and using Joe Biden as a puppet, and that there will be a tremendous comeback of Trump to continue the process, and as a result of that, to usher in the beginning of a real Messianic era. Very important concept, So you now understand the two major requirements that happened in Egypt, and that these two major requirements are actually being repeated today. And that's the logic of what's happening now. Okay. Any questions?
You have any questions? Mm-hmm. Makes sense. It makes sense, honestly.
I hope so.
Yeah, it does. I see what you're saying. So,
sure.
So basically what we're waiting on is the election.
Well, that's where the miracle has to happen. Where God has to turn over what everybody's... Look, you have to remember, God did the exact same thing in 2016. They told
Correct.
Trump 90% of the people are against you, that Hillary will win it by a landslide. They told him that. In fact, I remember hearing that Ivanka called her father at about 4 p.m. on the election day, Tuesday, and she told him, "Dad, it's over. We lost." Because at that point in time, they were counting the states, and they were and Hillary was winning. And then all of a sudden, at 5 o'clock, Florida went for Trump, then Pennsylvania, and Michigan, Ohio. It was a Nes Nigla. Unbelievable. That was a miracle. That Trump was even the candidate, let alone that he won. So do we think that God did this miracle for nothing? Do we really think, because he demonstrated an unbelievable miracle? Trump had no chance. We know that. He was running against 16 heads of governors and senators and so on. All of them were heavy hitters. And here's a guy who has no military experience, no foreign experience, no political experience, nothing. All he was is a businessman. How in the world can he win? Yet he won against all odds. Remember, the whole country was in utter shock for months. In fact, they still never got over it. They never accepted his presidency because the Russian did a Kriyas Yamsuf. So do we think that he's going to do it once and not do it again? You see? He did two things in Egypt. First, Kriyas Yamsuf. First was the Makkos that took the Jews out of Egypt. And the second thing is what destroyed the Egyptians. Well, maybe that's what's going to happen. First thing, he put Trump into power. The second thing, he's going to destroy the Democratic Party because they are responsible for demoralizing terribly the American people by their liberal policies and their radical left policies. Now, wouldn't that be incredible? An exact reenactment of what happened in Egypt. Exactly. Two miracles. Right?
This Rabbi, that they're Cuomo and de Blasio, they're all scared that the New York is going to go red in the elections, and the Jews, mostly whoever got closed, are voting Trump. So what they're doing is that they're shutting us down, and they made a thing that in 28 days, if no one, then they'll reopen us in 28 days. Well, 28 days is November 4th, the day after elections, which means that most of the voting booths will be closed because it's non-essential, and we'll have to do mail-in ballots. So
yeah, it's all a political ploy. Yeah,
exactly. So
it's all political.
The next could even be that even with all the shutdowns and all the things, he's still going to get New York. Could happen.
Yes. Look, remember one thing. Man does not decide who will be president of the United States. It's God.
Correct. Exactly.
And the Russian God does not care about what people think. Because just like he can influence men's minds, it's not a problem for him, you see.
Right.
So he pulled off two incredible miracles by the exodus of Egypt. Are we about to watch the second incredible miracle? Wouldn't that be incredible?
That Trump, he got COVID and he can't do all his rallies. People are like, oh my God, he's going to lose. No, it's the opposite. Daska, because he can't do the rallies, you would think that he's going to lose, and now he's going to win even more. He didn't need it.
But once he got COVID, the stocks went down. Once he waved yesterday, the stocks went up again. You saw it?
Yes. That's crazy.
Once he did what?
Once he went into the hospital, the stock market went down. But then when he came in, he went around yesterday in a car waving at the people. The stock market went back up.
Yeah. And that's what's happening. You're watching, like I said, two stages of development. Why? Because remember, God, you have to keep this in mind, God is into rescue. That's Tanogas HaYichud. We don't understand how it works. But God is now trying to rescue all the Jews to be in the Messianic era. And this is what's required, you see?
Yes. So two questions. So then where does the Mashiach fall into this? Because obviously it's out of order of Egypt, right? It's not in the exact same order because Moshe came after the first nest. So if because it's not the order, where do you think Mashiach finally reveals himself?
And the answer to that, I'll tell you, which is interesting, because Moshe Rabbeinu was designated as the candidate to be Mashiach. He would have been Mashiach had the Jews not sinned at the golden calf. But he was the designate to be the Mashiach. So in a certain sense, he began the redemption. You see what I'm saying? Now,
Yeah.
However, in today's time, right, there's somebody else who began the redemption, and that's Esav. Esav has returned to help Yaakov, also known as Trump. And therefore, you can have what's going on even without the Mashiach doing it. Even though I believe the Mashiach is clearly alive, no question about that, you know. But I want to tell you, besides the fact that Trump got COVID, Reb Chaim Kanievsky got COVID.
I know.
And Rabbi Diamond.
Rabbi Diamond?
Yes.
You mean from Deal?
Yes.
Yeah, but Reb Chaim Kanievsky is the Gadol Hador.
Correct.
He's the greatest man. So you can imagine how depressing that is for Jews.
My God.
Well,
I mean, he's 93 years old.
but he's doing well and studying.
They said
Good.
he's doing much better. Thank God.
And today,
But again, do you see what I'm saying? It's all part of the demoralization, or rather the despair that God is putting the Jews through.
Yeah,
you see?
It is an emotional roller coaster.
It's what?
An emotional roller coaster.
Exactly. It's unbelievable. So it's amazing that both of them got COVID at the same time.
Crazy. Yeah.
And it was Erev Sukkot.
Erev Sukkot and Yaakov and Esav both got the COVID together.
Yes. Do you see the difference? That's why in Egypt, Moshe Rabbeinu began the Geulah. But in the final Geulah, since Esav, right, has to join to help Yaakov, so the Geulah can happen, or it starts before that the Jewish people are now rising, you see, significantly. And therefore, these two stages can happen now. Because in many ways, Trump is part of that. He doesn't know this, but he's part of restoring Israel to its greatness, which is exactly what's happening. You see?
He does that.
Well, even if he realizes, I'm sure people have told him, but he doesn't understand the biblical people or the whole process of the redemption. Nobody understands that. You know, somebody could say, well, what you're doing is you're really tremendously helping America, but they don't understand the concept of Esav, the whole concept of Yaakov and Esav. You see, the whole concept that both have to be involved in the tikkun. They don't know this stuff. You see.
No, it's good. So we know who Esav is Donald Trump. Who's Yaakov?
Esav is, of course, like I say, Donald Trump, in the sense of Marcus Aurelius Antoninus, you know. Mm-hmm. But Yaakov is whoever the Mashiach is.
And we still don't know. Why can't he just tell us who he is?
Maybe he doesn't know yet, or he suspects, maybe. Remember, he himself has to have some type of a vision, or some type of a revelation, you see.
Once he has that revelation, he's going to come out? No.
Yes. Well,
yes?
Once he has that, remember what the revelation is. The revelation is that he will be freed from the klippah. And he will therefore get the yechidah, the great crown of the Mashiach that was part of Adam Harishon. Once he gets that, then he's out, then he knows who he is, and he begins to grow. That's what happens. He begins to grow, you see. So whether he reveals it to people or not is not important. What is important is that whatever he does succeeds. And that's the guarantee. Like it says by Yosef, and everything that Yosef did, God made successful. You see? It means you can't lose. No matter what he does, must be successful. He never fails. And that's what people begin to realize. That there's a guy who just, whenever he gives a bracha, it always works. Whatever he does, works, etc. You see? So the truth is, he doesn't have to really say anything. Actions, as they say in English, speak louder than words. He just has to do his thing, and automatically it will happen. And it's not only that. God will direct many things to him, you see, where he will become very famous. That's what's going to happen. It's a figure that will become very well known, And as a result of that, remember, 2 ingredients. He will become tremendously known, and he will never fail. And then everybody's going to say to himself, who else could this be but a messianic figure? Because he never fails. Never. That's the guarantee. You see? So Moshe Rabbeinu, right, he had to prove because, Paroi, he failed by Paroi because Paroi did not listen to him, right? So if you're the Mashiach, why is Paroi not listening? But the Mashiach, the end time, he will always succeed. You see, he will not fail. God will not harden the heart of people, you see, once it happens. So there is a difference. They're very similar. Like I said, they have the same stages, and with us, it's a little different because, Esav is a messianic figure now, whereas that wasn't true by Moshe Rabbeinu, you see. So therefore, there are differences. But the critical thing is that there will be a person that will be the Goel, the Redeemer, and he will never fail. And he will become very famous, never failing.
So all the anti-Semitism that we're experiencing right now, it's just for our atonement?
It's to increase the depression. It is to increase the despair. It's mamish like a roller coaster. One day you're up, and the next day you are down. It's unbelievable what is going on.
So just by having bitachon, that's how you rise above it?
The bitachon is that God will redeem the Jews, and that whatever God does will be successful, has a reason for this. And remember, you know the reason. And the answer is one word. It's called rescue. You are looking at the rescue of the Jewish people. And that is why you see all of this. And ultimately the rescue comes in 2 forms. 1, atonement, kapara. And the second rescue comes in bitachon. You have to trust God. And that merit will get the Jews out of this, just like it got the Jews out of the problem with Egypt himself. You see, so now you know very important ideas. You see, and you understand why it's like a roller coaster. Whatever Trump does, it doesn't work. What? What do you say?
How would you tie this into Hoshana Rabbah?
Well, Hoshana Rabbah is the final decree, right? God, he seals. In other words, I believe that this Rosh Hashanah, God decides he wants to bring the Gula. And he signed off on it, on Yom Kippur, right? But I believe, right, but that the mitzvah of Sukkah, you notice the weather is beautiful?
So nice. Keep saying it's a good siman.
Yes, because God wants the Jews to observe Sukkot, because that is a messianic holiday. Did you read the Haftarah of the first 2 days?
Yes.
It's messianic.
It's messianic.
Exactly. So therefore the merit of the Jews observing Sukkah, right, and the Sukkot, the beautiful days already, And I hear that it's not even going to rain the rest of the time. So the Sukkot of the Sukkah, I believe that God will sign off this Friday on Hoshana Rabbah that He's going to do it.
Wow.
That's what's going to happen. And obviously the elections are going to be the first real indicator of what's about to happen. You see? Where the whole America will be turned on its head. Because every enemy of the Jewish people and every enemy of mankind, all the friends and the agents of the Satan are waiting for the fall of Trump. Everyone. Iran, Hezbollah, Hamas, China, North Korea, they're all hoping he dies. Every one of them. Because he's really the only one that stands between, justice, truth, honesty, and evil dominating. If you think about that, he's really the only one. You see? And therefore, yeah.
In Shmini Atzeret, that's you were saying last week.
What was that?
Shmini Atzeret. You were saying that's the it has a feeling of Olam Haba on that day.
I didn't get what did you say? What, Tzedek?
Hold on. Shmini Atzeret.
Oh, Shmini Atzeres.
Yes.
Okay, the way you pronounce it, Shmini Atzeret. You're right. Shmini Atzeret is not Hoshana Rabbah. Shmini Atzeret is God's promise to the Jews that He will give us Olam Haba. Correct. That's why there's no mitzvah on Shmini Atzeres. There's no sukkah and there's no 4 minim, right? All it is basically a Yom Tov. Because on that day, we don't have to do anything. God, that's His signature. That's His part of the deal. Our part of the deal was the first 7 days, right? And I mentioned last week, that's why Sukkah, where we recognize that God protects us, and Lulav and Esrog and Hadassim and Aravot, that is where we do the mitzvot, no matter where He takes us, right? But Shemini Atzeres has no mitzvot at all. In fact, it's a different Yom Tov, and you have to say Shechionu. And that is God's part of the deal. That's His signature, that He will give us Olam Haba, you see. And that is really the reason why Sukkot has this unbelievable amount of simcha. Because it's, like I said, it's the restatement of the agreement or the contract between the Jews and God, that He will always be our God and we will always be His people. Like it says in the Navi so many times, and the whole world will see that I dwell in the midst of the Jews. Could you imagine what that's supposed to mean?
Rabbi,
what was that?
How do we take, like, the feeling in the Sukkah, you really do feel the presence of Hashem in it, if you open yourself to feel it. So how do we take that and continue keep that with us throughout the year? It's like, I don't want it to go.
Well, that takes thinking. That takes constant thought. That no matter what we do, we are always in the Sukkah. It never leaves us. We may go back into our house, right? But the experience of Sukkah always remains with us. Sukkot is not just 7 days. It's really the whole life. Is we live in a Sukkah. Except you can't live on that, all year long, right? But it's always with us. That He always protects us. So even though we are in a flimsy hut, right, God will always protect us. And not only that, but He will always get us into Olam Haba. And that's what the rescue is. God wants all the Jews to be present when He comes back. And that's why you're looking at all this, which is critical. You see?
Yeah.
Now you understand what's going on.
So what? So David comes on the 7th day, right? When does David come?
Hoshana Rabbah is David HaMelech, yes.
So he comes on the last day. Is there significance why he comes last? I'm assuming Mashiach ben David, but I don't know.
Yes, that's why. Because Mashiach ben David, because David is the forerunner, right, of Mashiach ben David, and that is the Mashiach, Mashiach ben David. And therefore, on Hoshana Rabbah.
Do we have any kavanah when on those nights, when Yosef comes and when David comes? Take out your tambourine.
Well, the kavanah should be that, God should bring these people right now. Yosef is the transition from this world until the spiritual world. And then once the spiritual world happens, which is Yemais HaMashiach, then you have Mashiach ben David. Look, these two people signify the end of time. So certainly that's what you can have in mind. But remember, David HaMelech, Mashiach ben David, is the final chapter in world history. And therefore he is on Hoshana Rabbah. Right? That's what it is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Moshe is with us in Sukkot tonight.
What was that?
I said Moshe is with us tonight.
Exactly. Yes, that's right. That's right.
Yeah, he's loving your class, let me tell you.
What was that?
I said he's sitting with us listening to your class.
I hope so. You want to hear something funny? Somebody told me. Somebody in Israel, it's a lockdown, right?
Yeah.
So listen to this. So you know who the Ishpizim are, right? Abim, Yitzchak, Yaakov, Moshe, Aaron, Yosef, and David, right? So the guy, in many ways it's tragic, but the guy said, one of the Knesset people said, nobody should have any guests at all, because of the lockdown. They shouldn't have, except immediate family and so on, but they should not have any friends, and they should not also invite the Ishpizim.
Really? What? They should not have what?
That's what they said? Are you serious?
Yeah, that's what I heard. Because he thinks the Ishpizim are really people.
Oh, my God. That's so
Could you imagine that kind of a ignorance?
Wow.
Yeah, you should not invite the Ishpizim. You never know, because maybe they have COVID, right?
How come it's called Ushpizim?
The Ushpizim are the guests that we invite every night.
Abram, Yitzchak,
Yaakov. What?
Why that word, Ushpizim?
Why is it called Orchim? Why is it Ushpizim?
Well, Ushpizim basically means the guests.
So does Orchim, like how Orchim?
Well, Ushpizim is Aramaic.
It's
Aramaic.
I was going to say it was Yiddish.
No, it's Aramaic. It's not Yiddish. No. Orchim is Hebrew. Ushpizim is Aramaic. But the main idea is that's why we are looking at a roller coaster. One day Trump is up, and the next day he's down. And he's continuously down. But listen, that's what Kriyas Yamsuf is. The second miracle. First miracle is that he won. Second miracle, he'll win again. And both are completely against Teva.
So we should keep looking at the movie. We should keep looking at these current events as a movie, as just to sit back and just watch Hashem's hand as what he does.
Yes. Yeah.
Because that's what
fascinating. But remember, you have a different perspective than everybody else.
Correct.
Everybody else doesn't know what's going on.
I feel bad for them.
Well, they have no idea. So they are in complete confusion. They cannot figure out what in the world's going on.
And when I tell them,
what?
I try to explain it to people, but they think I'm crazy.
Well, of course. You want to know what?
What Kool-Aid I'm drinking.
Yeah, well, listen. Yeah, because they don't. They, in many ways, they look at the world in a natural way, and naturally, it doesn't look like Trump will win.
And it bothers me when Jewish people are pro-Biden. It's mind-boggling.
Yes, it is mind-boggling. How could you vote for a man, even if Trump was not so great for the economy, but look what he did for Jews?
Yeah, I know. That's what I flipped out. One of
how
them
could
was
you
saying,
vote? Yeah, how could you vote for a man that has done nothing in 47 years?
Correct.
And how do you even compare him? I mean, even for Jews, you shouldn't vote this. For look how beneficial it is for Jews. You should vote for him. It's beyond belief how anybody could vote for Biden. It's just totally beyond belief. That itself is a miracle. The
polling that they're doing is all fake. They did it with Hillary also.
Yeah, exactly. But you never know. You have to remember there's a silent majority out there. There's a silent majority that doesn't say because they don't want to be labeled racist. You see.
Right.
Look, when a guy gets in that polling booth, he's going to remember one thing, that Trump had probably the greatest economy the U.S. has ever seen. Does he want to have a job, or does he want to have a demented person running the country? You know?
So do you think the Sukkot, by being in the Sukkot as most as you can this week, they say it saves you to have good health for the whole year? You think it's like a good...
Is that true?
Is it true?
Yes. Well, yeah, it is. It's a tremendous merit, sure. Yes.
Is there any segula to do in the Sukkah that you know of that's good for us to do besides being it?
Well, besides the mitzvah of Sukkah and the Arba Minim?
Yeah. Like, is there anything you should be doing in the Sukkah specifically that is a segula for X, Y, and Z?
Well, I think one of the greatest segulas is to remember why you're in the Sukkah. And not just to sit there, but to look around and realize that this Sukkah means that you are within the protection and the care of God.
True.
I think ultimately that belief is the most important thing.